In this video, I'm going to show you how to use this to create this. So what I have here is a Nikon DF with a 105 macro lens attached, and then a speed light from Nikon DSLR. Now, I usually would tell you don't use on-camera flash, but for this specific task, that's what I recommend for simplicity. Now, here's why. This flash is it's TTL, and by having it directly on the hot shoe, you can utilize the TTL mode. Typically, I'm doing flash manually, especially when I'm doing headshots or any sort of portraits like that. But for these type of photos, you need to be fast. You need to be able to maneuver and adjust quickly. And by putting the flash on TTL, you can let it sort of think for you because you're not actually aiming the light at the newborn. What you're doing is you're actually going to bounce the flash off the ceilings and walls. And you're doing that because you don't want to actually wake up the baby. You don't want to blind the baby with these flash. You know, they're only a couple days old typically when these type of photos are being made. So you're trying to not sort of distract the baby at all. Now, in the photos that you see here, I am actually, the infant is actually, the newborn is actually sleeping and sleeping on her dad. And all I wanted to do was get a bunch of quick close-ups like you see here of the child. And so to do so, what I did was I sort of went overhead of the child, and then I took the flash, rotated it up like so, and bounced the flash off the ceiling. Now you can do it with just the bare flash, or you can put on a little dome and sort of diffuse a little bit more, make it a little bit softer. By bouncing it off a ceiling or a wall, you are already going to soften the light, but this will even soften it more. This will also bounce the light in multiple directions because you're now sort of spreading it out in a whole different types of directions as is. But by aiming it away and up or to the side, the beautiful thing is you can sort of aim in any direction you want. You are taking the light away from the child, and you're only going to be illuminating the room overall because of the light bouncing off of a white ceiling or a white wall. If the ceilings and whatnot are not white, then you may need to rethink the situation because you really need it to be white. Otherwise, you're going to create a color cast of, let's say, if the walls are really bright green, you're going to have green tones hitting the skin of the child, and that won't be very flattering. Of course, you can white balance. You can do a custom white balance with the color checker passport, and that'll solve that issue. So step one is to make sure you have a good setup for doing close-ups, and I definitely recommend a macro lens. I've used a lot of different macro lenses. Before I had this one from Nikon, this is an older one at this point. It's been out for a long time, but before I had this one, I was using a Tamron 90mm, and I just found that the Nikon one is just so much better. If you are going to be doing this with flash, turn off the VR. You won't need the VR. Whenever I do headshots with this, and I do this without flash, then I turn the VR on because it can help. But otherwise, if you don't need the VR, don't utilize that extra mode because it'll slow things down a little bit, and it'll also degrade the sharpness of the image a little bit more. Step two is make sure that you have your shutter speed at the highest that your camera can do. So this camera, I believe the highest is 125, so that's what I did. And then I had the aperture at f8. Okay, you want the aperture to be at a nice level because otherwise you're going to have too shallow of a depth of field. Now, when it comes to flash, when using artificial flash, it's important to know that the shutter speed will actually adjust the brightness of the background. So if you are not doing close-ups, if you were doing something where you had a background that was not illuminated, then the shutter speed would be adjusting the ambience, the brightness of whatever's in the background not illuminated by the artificial light. But if you are doing, or an aperture, adjust the ambience of the brightness of the actual subject you're photographing that is being illuminated by this artificial light. And when you're doing TTL, the flash will adjust. And that's sort of what this whole part comes in handy. It actually looks at whatever you're photographing, and it knows where you're, how you're bouncing light and whatnot, and it's seeing everything very fast, faster than your eye can see it, determining how bright and powerful that flash needs to be based on what the lens is seeing as well. So that's through the lens. That's exactly what TTL means. So although you can adjust the shutter speed and aperture to adjust the light and how, what the light does, it's not going to work as well as it would if you were doing the flash on manual. Because you're doing TTL, it's still going to adjust for you. So your aperture is really just going to be for your depth of field. The next thing is to make sure you have it on single shot. If you have it on a continuous high or continuous low, you can cause some shake. Even with the flash, you don't want to do that because you also don't want to have too fast of a burst to wake up the child. You want to make sure that everything is quiet. And that's the other thing, is you want to make sure that the room is quiet. There's no distractions at all for you. Everything is just, it's just a very quiet, peaceful area for the newborn to just sleep. Because if the newborn's up, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get these close-ups. So I want to show you some of the close-ups that I did. Let's go to the screen so you can see. I'll go back to the beginning. Some of the close-ups I did yesterday. So here you can see what I did is I actually duplicated all of them as virtual copies inside of Lightroom, and I did a black and white and color of each. I have not edited any of them yet other than making a black and white version. And you can see I just kept moving around and getting different angles and getting close-ups of different body parts. That's some of the fun is getting close-up of ears and noses and fingers and eyes and mouth, but then also getting a mixture of things in it. So just have fun with it. I think this is my favorite one of them all so far, because you're getting a little bit of everything. And then this one, it kind of looks like it's a mirrored, but it's just her face is all squishy, which is it's really cute. And then you got the eye, which is great. And then I got her holding her mother's finger. And then a little bit different angles, playing with depth of field a little bit. It's the other side. It took a little bit for me to get the other hand because she was not moving too much, and eventually she turned and her hand appeared out from under her head, which was great. And then I think I got one more after this. That might have been it. Let's see. Yep, that's it. So there you go. So that's what I recommend. Really simple. Don't overthink a session like this. Just go with a digital SLR or mirrorless, a macro lens, and a TTL flash that you can rotate. Don't use one that's just straight. Use one that you can rotate and bounce it off of a ceiling, bounce it off of a wall. And it's okay to do on-camera flash for something like this, because you need to be able to maneuver. You need to be able to adapt. So on-camera flash and TTL works just fine for something like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.